Hey guys, what's going on? Megan here. The sunlight video is finally out. Can the sun get you jacked? Alright, so problem up to 90% of people don't get enough sun. Why is that an issue? Well, the sun is one of the top 5 most anabolic things. Up there with sleep, water, protein, and healthy fats. So whenever you guys hear me say manage recovery well, you're about to find out why I always include sunlight. And I guarantee you after this video, you might end up spending a lot more time outside. But anyway, bodybuilder of the day is Berto Fox. Very controversial bodybuilder due to his criminal past. In fact, he's serving time in prison right now. But we're not going to get into the details. We keeping it strictly bodybuilding based. As you all know, the bodybuilder of the day has nothing to do with their videos. It's purely for entertainment. Anyway, height 5'8", weight 245 pounds, gives him an arm ratio of about 42, which is pretty jacked. And his best body part was his biceps and his chest. The power of the sun, right? So first, the sun has direct effects on your ability to build muscle. And obviously later on in the video, I'm going to explain the mechanism behind it, the conversion of vitamin D and all that stuff. But pretty much has a huge effect on your ability to build muscle. It has strong effects on your ability to burn fat. It has powerful effects on your brain, so your depression, motivation, and obviously it has massive, massive effects on your health. And all of these things are proven, guys. How does the sun directly affect your strength? Well, one, it affects your fat source fibers, right? It increases the size of your fat source fibers and the amount of fat source fibers that you have. Has been proven to improve your performance, your recovery, your glycogen synthesis, which is obviously going to fuel your workouts, mainly through insulin sensitivity, and obviously your hormone, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And also a fun fact about performance, studies have been done on athletes, and they found out that the performance of athletes usually peaks right around the time when the amount of sunlight, the amount of optimal sunlight that we get also peaks, right? So not only it's very correlated with the vitamin D levels in the blood, but also with the season, right? So obviously you guys know you get maximum benefits of sunlight around the summer, and then you get the lowest amount of sunlight around wintertime, and that's exactly the pattern that athletic performance follows. Next, sunlight and myostatin, unless you've been living under a rock. You should know by now that myostatin is one of the most important regulators of muscle mass. In short, the more myostatin you have, the harder it is for you to build muscle, and the less myostatin you have, the more muscle you build. And as you can see in these different pictures here, this was the baby that had a myostatin deficiency, and as you can tell, this guy's jacked out of his mind. Look at his calves. Same thing with the Belgian blue cows. You got the mice. You got the myostatin deficient dogs. So in short, myostatin is one of the most important things to look at when we're talking about muscle growth. And obviously, sunlight has a profound effect on myostatin concentrations. Also, keep in mind, guys, when you train, your myostatin levels go down temporarily, which is what allows you to build muscle from training. But obviously, that's very short lived, right? The reduction you get in myostatin from training goes away after about 24 hours. And of course, anything that increases testosterone or IGF-1 is automatically going to lower your myostatin. And anything that increases your stress hormone, cortisol, is going to increase your myostatin. Sunlight and satellite cells. If you watch my videos, you know I'm huge on satellite cells. That's what nucleus overload is all about. The more satellite cells and nuclei you have, obviously, the more muscle you can put on. And sunlight has an effect on not just your myostatin concentrations, which we just talked about, that also influences your satellite cell activity, but on IGF-1, which is one of your master regulators of satellite cells, and obviously testosterone, right? Again, which is why when people are on steroids, they have huge increases in satellite cell and nuclei content. Next, sunlight and hormones. Again, testosterone. You cannot avoid testosterone when you're talking about muscle growth, right? The most anabolic hormone in the body. Sunlight has profound effects on your testosterone levels, especially if you're deficient. And quick refresher, the body produces about 3 to 10 milligrams of testosterone a day. So the average person will produce about 7 milligrams a day, which comes out to about 50, right? 49 to 50 milligrams a week. So if you have shitty genetics or you're obese or whatever, so you on this end of the range here, you're producing about 3 milligrams a day. Average person will probably make, again, 7. If you're lucky, you have good genetics or, good lifestyle factors and stuff like that, you're probably pumping out 10 milligrams a day, which is going to come out to about 70 milligrams a week. A person on TRT is making almost double that, right? 50% to double that amount, right? Because they're getting, let's say, 150, 200 milligrams of testosterone a week. If you remove the ester weight, that still comes out to a significant amount of testosterone per day, at least about 15 milligrams. Some are even getting 20. And obviously, people that are on steroids, on huge doses of steroids, like IBB pros, they're getting way more than that, right? They're getting anywhere from 50 to 60, sometimes even 70 milligrams of testosterone a day, even if you remove the ester weight. And of course, if you want super high doses of testosterone, based on the study that I mentioned over and over again, look at the effects. 600 milligrams of testosterone for 10 weeks. The group that did not train put on 20 pounds on their bench press from not training. So their bench press went up about 20 pounds from not training at all. Not only they put on lean mass, right, they added 20 pounds to their bench press. And the natty group, right, so natty plus training, put on about the same amount. So super high doses of testosterone. Don't worry, you're not going to get that from sunlight, but super high doses of testosterone from steroids obviously gives you just as much strength in 10 weeks as a person who's going to the gym full natty training. Now, the natty group did put on more gains than the squats, but still, these stats are amazing. Just to show you that testosterone is no joke. And don't let nobody tell you that, oh, it's just water weight, it's not real muscle. No, a lot of follow up studies were done, and they found that, yes, the gains that you put on from testosterone are mainly lean muscle mass. They looked at protein synthesis, my favorite protein synthesis. They looked at the different fibers, type 2, type 1, and they've all concluded the same thing. Further proof of that is the fact that steroids themselves were invented for people who were bedridden, people that were in ICU, intensive care unit, people who were wasting away from cancer, AIDS, HIV. Steroids were invented for those people. They were not invented for bodybuilders, right? So if testosterone didn't increase your lean muscle mass, they wouldn't give it to ICU patients, right? They don't go up to a person who's burning away and wasting away and say, hey, let's increase your water weight. Of course not, right? So, as a natty, keep prioritizing your testosterone levels. Now, there's an interesting study. I call it the ball study. It was back in the 1930s, Dr. Abraham something, where they exposed men's testicles to sunlight, and they reported huge increases in testosterone. Right? I think the ones that exposed their chests got like 100%, 120% increase in testosterone, and the ones who had the sunlight beaming down on their balls got way more than that. I forgot the exact amount. But the thing about the study, again, it was done back in 1930s. And the thing about the study, though, is that there's not a lot of follow-up studies on that, right? I don't like quoting random, single studies. I like seeing, uh, you know, meta-analysis or several different variations of the same study. So hopefully they do more of these studies. I believe, right? Personally, I believe that it's true, right? But again, I don't want to go off my beliefs. I want to see the facts. So hopefully they do a lot more of these studies in the near future because I actually want to see, like, is this true? Because I don't mind. I will go out balls dangling if that's true. But until we see further studies on that, I can't really tell you guys to go with your balls hanging out. If you want to try it, fine. But I personally think that it might work. But anyway, sunlight also has effects on your insulin sensitivity, your leptin, and your IGF-1, as I already mentioned. Next, sunlight and energy levels. So, sunlight has proven to improve your dopamine levels. Which you guys know, dopamine is responsible for your motivation, your willpower. So, if you're dieting or you're just trying to, you're trying to stick to a diet or a training program, your dopamine levels are paramount, right? Also, keep in mind, dopamine converts to adrenaline. So, if you have low dopamine, chances are you're going to have low energy levels. And remember, adrenaline is your most powerful fat burner. Sunlight has been proven to improve serotonin, right? And the thing is, everyone knows this one. You don't even need a study to prove that because everyone just feels better around the summertime. And most of the depression, most people are just depressed as fuck in the wintertime. Now, of course, correlation is not causation. There are other things in play. But we have seen, the research has shown direct effects of sunlight, obviously vitamin D, on your mood. Again, you have a lot of vitamin D receptors in all these regions of the brain that are associated with mood, depression, confidence, all these things. So sunlight does affect your mood, does affect your confidence. And obviously, by increasing your testosterone, it increases your red blood cells, which is going to obviously increase your energy. Why is that important? Well, you can't make gains if you feel like shit all the time, right? Next, sunlight and muscle growth increases your protein synthesis through mTOR, your IGF-1 levels, testosterone, fast twitch muscles, your insulin sensitivity. That's going to help not just with carb, but obviously protein. People forget that insulin also helps the absorption of amino acids. So if you're getting a lot of protein, but you're insulin resistant, you're not making full use of that. It lowers protein breakdown through managing myostatin and cortisol, and obviously increases your performance through, as mentioned earlier, increasing your strength, your willpower, your energy, and your ability to recover. Yes, sunlight does affect your ability to recover from workouts. Oh, and back to the fast twitch muscle part, it's also no coincidence that the tribes and population groups that have the highest concentration of fast twitch muscles, which are mainly West Africans, also around the part of the equator that gets the strongest, best concentration of UVB rays. But I'm gonna go into more detail when I make my video on genetics and why West Africans and Jamaicans and descendants of West Africans, which are African Americans, have so much more fast twitch muscles than every other group on the planet. Stay tuned for that video. Next, sunlight and fat loss. Yes, again, it's going to help you with fat loss, so improving your insulin sensitivity, right? Which is obviously going to lower your symptoms of type 2 diabetes. It's going to lower inflammation and obviously your hormonal adaptations, which, as I mentioned earlier, testosterone is one of the most powerful fat antagonists. Everyone thinks testosterone is just muscle, muscle, muscle. No, testosterone is also, especially in the natural range, one of the most powerful anti-fat hormones. And also, just trying to get more sunlight is going to indirectly make you burn fat because you're going to go out in the sun, right? Going out in the sun is going to have you move around more, walk around more, maybe do more cardio. So that's going to directly increase your NEAT, right? Your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. When you indoors all day, trust me, you're not burning shit, right? Sitting on a chair or laying in bed playing video games, you're not burning a lot of calories. Meanwhile, going outside, even if it's just for a walk, walking your dog, playing soccer, basketball, whatever, that's going to increase your ability to burn fat because you're just going to automatically burn more calories. And obviously, sunlight and health. The effects of sunlight and health are monstrous, guys. Ton and ton and ton and ton and ton of studies back this up. Effects on cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, renal cancer. In fact, because black people have one of the lowest concentrations of vitamin D, um, it's also linked to the fact that we have the highest rates of prostate cancer out of all population groups. Now, there's a lot of debate, so some studies saying, hey, well, black people do have lower vitamin D, but they have less of the binding protein. Some are saying, no, this was an error. They have less of the binding protein, but the affinity is higher, blah, blah, blah. Scientists are going back and forth, but one thing that we know for a fact is that black people, especially outside of their quote-unquote natural habitat, so outside of the, uh, you know, countries that are close to the equator have very, very low vitamin D levels. And they also have all the symptoms and diseases associated with low vitamin D, except the bone issue, because the body finds ways to overcompensate for the lack of vitamin D. For example, if you have low vitamin D, it'll try to increase your parathyroid hormone, things like that, or to increase the affinity of the binding protein or lower your binding protein. But your body can only overcompensate for so long. Eventually, things start to break down. So anyway, so sunlight has been shown to reduce cancer, heart disease, blood pressure, diabetes, both type 1 and type 2, obesity, leptin resistance, all the bone diseases, MS, depression, autoimmune diseases, inflammation, flu, cold, blah, 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 you name it. And now with the whole coronavirus bullshit, people are getting even less vitamin D, right? Because everyone is staying indoors and not going out as much. So the benefits of sunlight are endless. And that's why ancient civilizations used to worship the sun, the source of life. The Egyptians, the Aztecs, the Romans, the Greeks, you name it. Almost every major civilization knew the powerful effects of sunlight. And now we finally have studies that actually show that, holy shit, this is happening on a chemical level. But anyway, how does this whole thing work, right? How it works. One, start off with the sun, right? So you have the UVB rays, right? You guys know there's UVA, UVB, whatever. So UVB rays, usually around 10 to 2 p.m., that's when they're the strongest. You also have to be around the right latitude, right? Anything below 37 is ideal. And they come in contact with your skin, and they convert 7-dehydrocholesterol, which is just a precursor to cholesterol, into vitamin D3, right? Using your skin. So your skin converts cholesterol into vitamin D3 using sunlight. That's why vitamin D is not really a vitamin, it's actually a hormone. It's a steroid hormone. The reason why it was called a vitamin is because, again, it was the fourth quote unquote vitamin discovered. So that's why it's called vitamin D, vitamin A, B, C, D. But eventually we found out that, holy shit, this thing is actually a hormone. Your body makes it. Now, here's the thing. If you're white, if you have pale skin, it only takes you about 15 minutes to get a huge dose of vitamin D from the sun, right? About 10 to 20,000 IUs. If you're dark, it'll take you 6 to 8 times more exposure, more sun in order to get that same amount, right? Because remember, that's one of the main reasons, if not the only reason, why there's different skin colors, different skin pigmentations. If you go further north, you're not gonna find. In fact, you're gonna find zero indigenous black tribes far above the equator. That's just not gonna happen because white skin evolved to be able to absorb vitamin D better. And also, if you go too far below the equator, and if you go too far below the 37, 40 parallel, right, close to the equator, you're not gonna find a lot of white tribes. And keep in mind, I'm talking about back in the days, not now where everybody's traveling, planes and boats and shit. But I'm referring to thousands and thousands of years ago. So why is that, right? Remember, the darker your skin, the less sunlight you can absorb due to melanin. That's what melanin does. Melanin is a natural sunscreen, right? So if you have dark skin, you have a lot of melanin, and that melanin protects you from the sun. That's why black people don't use sunscreen. I didn't even know what the fuck sunscreen was till I got older, and I was like, what the fuck? Like people actually use this shit? Believe it or not, growing up in West Africa, I had no clue that white people had to use sunscreen. Right? So black people have melanin and that protects them from the sun. The downside of that is it also lowers the amount of vitamin D we get from the sun. So we have to spend more time outside in order to get the same amount. Whereas white people can just be outside for 15 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, and boom, they have enough vitamin D to last them for a good while. That's also why black people outside of Africa or in the modern world have so many issues that are linked to low vitamin D's because we no longer in quote unquote our natural habitat. We're no longer getting that equator sun. Not only we have melanin, but now you have air conditioners keeping people indoors. You have clothes, right? People have long sleeve clothes, pants, all that stuff. So it's creating a lot of health issues. But anyway, you can also get vitamin D3 from your diet, but you're not going to get as much as from the sun. That's why I keep saying sunlight as opposed to just vitamin D, because you could get vitamin D from your diet, you can get it from fish. For example, fish, you need about, depending on what kind of fish, right? Depending if it's salmon or tuna, if it's farm raised or wild caught, you're going to get different amounts of vitamin D, right? But even the highest amount, it's usually about 100 IU per ounce. You're gonna have to eat about 50 ounces of fish, of salmon. Again, depending on what kind of fish, just to get 5,000 IU's. That's not happening, right? That's just not realistic. You can try to use cod liver oil, right? 2 ounces will give you about close to 6,000 IU, but people stop taking cod liver oil. Or you could just supplement. You could take the pill, vitamin D3. It comes in. The pills are usually 5,000 IU. Some are 10,000 IU. They're very cheap, right? But as always, getting it from the sun is always the best source. In fact, the vitamin D you get from your diet is not as stable as the one that your body actually makes. Which obviously makes sense, right? We did not evolve to get vitamin D outside of sunlight. Right? Again, you're not gonna find 50 ounces of fish on a daily basis, and our ancestors clearly didn't have vitamin D pills. But anyway, so once your body has vitamin D3, it goes to your liver and it gets converted into 25 hydroxy D, right, which is the precursor to the active form. In fact, when you get tested for your vitamin D levels, that's what they look at. But anyway, so 25 hydroxy D goes to your kidney and eventually gets converted to the active hormone, which is 125 hydroxy D, right? So that's the active form. Now, once you have the active form of vitamin D, it goes to your DNA, and again, it's a transcription factor, right? It enters the nucleus of the cell and it starts helping with gene expression, protein synthesis, blah, blah, blah. Or it also goes to your gut and obviously helps you retain calcium. That's the part of vitamin D that everyone knows. Everyone knows the effects on bone health and calcium, but very few people know the effects that it has on everything else I just mentioned. So, of course, it goes to your gut. It helps you retain calcium, helps you absorb calcium. Keep in mind, guys, you also need magnesium for all this to work. So, if you're deficient in magnesium, you can say goodbye to that. And again, that gives you strong, healthy bones, blah, 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 right? If you don't have enough vitamin D and you obviously have low calcium absorption, you end up with fucking rickets, right? So, a lot of you guys, especially the older people, know what rickets are. It's pretty much being eradicated once we find out that sunlight and vitamin D was the number one cure for it. But some people still have rickets. I mean, their legs come out all snapped up and shit, right? So you're so bold and poorly formed. And this used to happen to kids back during the Industrial Revolution when they didn't get enough sunlight, right? So low sunlight, low vitamin D, and their bones came out all snapped up and shit. And obviously, if you're older, that's gonna lead to increased risk of falls, all the bone diseases and things like that. So that's how sunlight affects your entire body. Now, how much do you need? The optimal range is about 40 nanogram, right? Between 40 to 60 nanogram per milliliter. Or if you're using nanomole per liter, it's about at least 100. Now, that's the optimal range. It starts at above 40. Most people are way below that. In fact, most people are around 20. Some are around 15. Some are even lower than that. If you at 30, That's when you're away from the danger zone. So 30 is not optimal. It just means you're away from the danger zone. But optimal is definitely above 40. In fact, people that work in the sun, so construction workers or lifeguards and things like that, they have about, I think it's about 60 to 80. So they have much higher levels of vitamin D, which is great. If you also go to certain countries in Africa, where you look at the tribes, man, the ones who are closest to our ancestors, they're living in the wild, they don't have a lot of clothes on. They're around, I believe, around 50 nanogram per milliliter. Anywhere in that 40 to 60 range. So that's where you want to be. And this is 25 OHD, by the way. So this is 25 hydroxy D levels. Optimal dose, you need at least 5,000 IU, right? You need at least 4 to 5,000 IU just to be around 40 nanogram per milliliter, right? Depending on your age and the amount of body fat that you have, you might need more because, again, vitamin D is fat soluble. So if you have a lot of body fat, you're actually going to have less vitamin D in your blood because a lot of it is going to be stuck in your fat tissue. And there's no toxicity below 30,000 IU, so you could take up to 30,000 IU. Some studies have shown people taking up to 60,000 IU for years and had no issue, right? So, and if you're old or you have dark skin or you have high body fat, you might need way more than that. And again, the sun gives you up to 25,000 IUs, depending on your skin color and then what time of day it is and things like that, in less than an hour, right? So our body is designed to absorb a lot of IUs from the sun, right? You cannot go vitamin D toxic from the sun because your body has mechanisms in place where if you're making too much from your skin, it just starts to break down. So you're good either way. The only way you're gonna go toxic is if you just try to overdose with supplements and things like that. Next, optimal sources. Again, food, not good enough, right? Like I mentioned earlier, fish is the number one source of vitamin D in foods, but you need about 50 ounces to get 5,000 IU, depending on what fish you're getting, right? Wild caught versus farm raised, salmon versus tuna, things like that. But salmon has the highest concentration of vitamin D, but again, it's still not enough. Cod liver oil will give you a lot more. 2 ounces will give you close to 6,000 IU. Supplements, one pill can give you anywhere from 5 to 10,000 IU. But again, like I mentioned earlier, it's not as efficient and effective as the amount synthesized by your skin from sunlight. The sun, so UVB rays, is the number one source of vitamin D by far. Not only are you getting a ton in a short amount of time, but it's more bioavailable. And 15 minutes gives you about 10 to 20,000 IU if you're going at the right time of day with minimal clothing and if you have lighter skin. Again, 10 to 2 p.m., latitude below 37, so as close to the equator as possible. Now, here's some caveats. Can't have sunscreen because sunscreen obviously blocks UVB rays. So if you have a lot of sunscreen, then you're going to block 98% of the sun. You're going to block 98% of the UVB rays, meaning you're going to synthesize 98% less. No excessive clothing, obviously, right? Your skin has to be exposed. Not black, right? If you're black, you need way more time exposed to the sun. So instead of 15 minutes or 30 minutes, you'll need up to 2 hours or more. Can be old. If you're old, you obviously need more because old people have a hard time synthesizing vitamin D, which explains a lot of the reasons why old people have cancers and insulin resistance issues, bone issues, muscle growth issues. All of that is linked very strongly to vitamin D. Can be obese. The fatter you are, the more vitamin D is actually going to be stuck in your fat tissue. So you have to lose weight. And you can't be on a low fat diet because obviously vitamin D is fat soluble. And you cannot have a magnesium deficiency. Your body needs magnesium to activate vitamin D and to also transport it. And you also have to have low stress, right? Low stress, low cortisol. Why? Because cortisol has a negative effect on your vitamin D receptors. So the worst person this can apply to right now is if you old, black, fat, full of stress on a low fat diet with low magnesium and wearing too and wearing too many fucking clothes, right? So you're trying to limit those things here when you're trying to maximize. That's one of the worst things you could do for vitamin D. And again, when I mentioned the equator, right, these are the countries getting the most UVB rays. And believe it or not, even though they're getting the most UVB rays, nowadays a lot of these people are still vitamin deficient. Why? Simply because of air conditioning. Now people stay indoors longer. People don't go outside when the sun is out, when the sun is high. And in most of these countries, especially the Middle Eastern countries, people are covered up. Right? In fact, women in those countries have the lowest vitamin D levels even lower than men because they're covered from head to toe. So they're not synthesizing any vitamin D. So these are the best regions for optimum synthesis. And then you have some here. And obviously, if you live up here, you pretty much fucked, right? Because it's almost impossible for you to maximize your vitamin D production. But based on evolution, if you're living up there before airplanes and boats and all that shit, you have very, very pale skin. So your body is able to absorb UVB rays a lot better. But nowadays, with planes and boats and, humans going all over the damn place, we have a lot of issues, right? Because now you have people with pale skin coming here and getting their skin burned and the shit snapped up. You got dark skinned people going to the north and getting no sunlight and getting a bunch of issues. So keep in mind, guys, millions of years of evolution is not going to be reversed in just a few hundred years of technology. So that's it, guys. Conclusion: optimal level is above 40 nanogram per milliliter. You want at least 5,000 IUs a day to reach that. And as far as safety goes, skin cancer, guys, if you're white, if you have really light skin, don't snap your shit up. 15 minutes, maybe 30-minute max is all you need, right? Get your sunlight. You can get the fuck out the way, right? Don't go out there. You see, there's always that person that wants to overdo everything. Kind of like how me and my client were joking about with the whole blood flow restriction thing. There's always that one person that's gonna say, "Oh, 15 minutes of sunlight is all I need. I'm going to go for an hour." And then they're going to come back burnt, toasted, and say, "Oh, Megan gave me wrong advice." So keep it safe. There are some apps. In fact, there's an app called, let me pull it up. There's an app called D-Minder. Really, really, really good app. It should be free. In fact, it's free right now because of coronavirus. But it helps you get enough vitamin D and it warns you if you're in the sun for too long, whatever. So keep it safe. As always, consult your doctor. And why is this information not popular enough? Why is no one or few people talk about it? Because there's no money in it, guys. There's no money in sunlight, right? The media doesn't push things where, companies don't like to push out things that they can't profit off, right? Telling people, hey, go out in the sun. Well, guess what? If the sun helps lower your cancer, heart disease, and all that stuff, that's billions of dollars lost by the healthcare industry. That's just a fact, right? You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to understand how the whole dynamic works, right? There's no money in that shit. There's no money in people being healthy. There's a lot more money in people being slightly healthy, right? So they don't want you to die because then they just can't make money for you, right? You can't tax dead citizens. But at the same time, if you're super healthy, then that's billions of dollars lost by the healthcare industry. So that's one of the reasons why they don't push the shit out. And again, the other reason is, like I said, there's just no money, because sun is free. You can't sell sunlight. You can't be like, hey, come here, I got 5 ounces of sunlight. Doesn't work like that, right? People are just gonna say, well, fuck you, I'm going outside, right? And also, vitamin D supplements are super cheap, so there's no money in telling people to get more sunlight. So that's why this information is not popular. But anyway, guys, go out there and get more sunlight. If you're doing cardio, do your cardio in the sun. If you just want to go out and sit down, if you want to exercise, now everybody's doing home workouts because of coronavirus. Do your home workouts in the sun. Try to get your sunlight. If you're a dark-skinned brother like myself, you need way more sunlight. So don't play around. Make sure your levels are above 40 nanogram per milliliter. Alright, guys, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell. Visit my website and grab a copy of my ebook and training program. Go to www.team3dalpha.com and don't forget to use the 40% off coupon code Nucleus Overload.